Welcome to a meeting of the Town of Barnstable's Comprehensive Financial Advisory Committee. Today is September 11th, 2023. This meeting is being recorded and will be broadcast on Channel 8 after the meeting is over, and the agenda is on the town website. To begin our meeting, Chuck, will you call the roll, please?
William,
Here.
Hector,
I'm here.
Chris,
Here.
Neil,
Here.
Jackie,
Here.
Wendy,
Here.
and Chuck is here, all present and accounted for.
We're perfect. Thank you. We'll go right into the, I see we don't have members of the public here, so we'll go immediately into our discussion. And we are so lucky to have Griffin to give us an update on CWMP. And thank you very much for coming. I know how busy your days are, so it's all yours.
Of course. Thank you for having us again. It's good to see you all again. Look forward to seeing you in a couple months to discuss CIPs again as well. Mark, do I have the ability to share my screen at this point?
Great.
Okay, Griffin, you're good to go. All right. Everyone able to see that okay?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, great. Again, thank you for having me this evening. I'm going to go through a quick progress update on implementation of the CWMP, and then certainly I'll be here to answer any questions that we have at the end. So things I'll touch on, just a real quick CWMP overview. I'm sure everybody's familiar with the issues we're trying to tackle, but always like to just remind everybody why we're doing the program. And then I have some project updates on our active sewer expansion projects, as well as some quick overview updates on the projects we have ongoing at the water pollution control facility as well. I put in a copy of the capital plan from the FY24 CIP as just a reminder of what was approved last year and what the plan calls for in this upcoming capital cycle, which is a big one. And then I have a quick bullet on some communications resources just to give you all an update as to the things we're doing to try to continue to improve communication and outreach about the program.
Griffin, this is excellent. Can you make sure that Mark gets this copy of this deck to distribute to us?
Of course.
Great, thanks.
Right, again, so just a quick reminder as to what the general problem is that we're trying to achieve. You know, principally what the program's trying to achieve is to address the impairment of our coastal waters, specifically our embayments, which all of our south-facing embayments are impaired principally by nitrogen. So at the bottom of the screen is a pie chart that really shows the sources of controllable nitrogen on Cape Cod. It shows that 78% of the nitrogen that enters our coastal waterways is coming from septic systems. So septic system remediation really is the key to nitrogen remediation on Cape Cod. There are other concerns we're trying to deal with the CWMP, improving groundwater quality. We all know we are on a sole source aquifer, which is where we receive our water supply. So protecting our groundwater is key and paramount to really survival on Cape Cod. Also pond water quality concerns. We've had a proliferation of water quality concerns in ponds, such as cyanobacteria and other similar concerns, which really can be linked back to nutrient proliferation, not all that dissimilar from what we're seeing in our coastal waterways. There's also looking to address some flood zone and climate change issues, as well as promoting targeted economic development. And then obviously we also need to achieve regulatory requirements, which really the above bullets are all items we're trying to address and that the regulators want us to address. So what is Barnstable's plan? It's a three 10-year phases of sewer expansion for a total of 30 years. 190 miles of new sewers, about 12,000 new properties to be connected. Some of the key points of the plan is it leverages the existing infrastructure that we fortunately already have. We already have a sewer system in town that's built out in a large part of Hyannis and some portions of Barnstable Village, which comes back to our water pollution control facility, which is an asset to the community that is going to be leveraged at great lengths through this program. It also incorporates some non-traditional projects such as dredging, stormwater enhancement, and some others, aquaculture, but it doesn't really rely on them. They're really intended to supplement the program and potentially result in some savings on the back end of the program. But the program achieves the goals of the program with the traditional solutions, which are sewer expansion. It's also adaptive is really the key to the program. The plan has to be flexible and has to adapt to the changing environments and regulatory environments. We have to submit 5-year updates, and we have to submit annual updates. And ultimately, the goal of the program is to achieve the TMDLs and the total maximum daily loads in the coastal waterways. So a reminder of what the plan looks like. This is the overview of our sewer expansion program. In red is phase 1, so the 0 to 10 years. In green is phase 2, so the 11 to 20 years time frame. And in yellow is phase 3, the 21 to 30 year time frame. Also out in Katuitt, there are the 3 stages, which are effectively an area that has been identified to be sewered, but does not have a time associated with it yet, for a number of reasons. We're getting closer to zeroing in on setting a timeline there. But just as the plan had been produced, there were a number of reasons why we didn't set a time associated with that. Really, distance was principally the biggest one. But also at the time, there had been a lot of discussion about exploring a Western solution such as JBCC and the like. And at the time we established the plan, we left those without a time frame. All right, so now getting into implementation of the program. I just have to get it's out of my way. Give me 1 second. There we go. All right, so last map was the big picture program. So within each phase, we don't execute each phase as one big project. We execute it as a number of still pretty large projects, but smaller, more digestible projects. And that's what this map, which we call our phase 1 implementation plan, shows. And this shows the approximately 17 projects that make up the sewer expansion program in phase 1. So every color basically represents a different project that'll be executed on a separate timeline. We are in year 3 of 10 of phase 1. The first connections within the Strawberry Hill Road sewer expansion project, which I'll talk about in a second, are anticipated for this upcoming spring. There are 13 individual projects, phase 1 projects, that are actively either in some level of planning, design, or construction, and have funding associated with them. And the plan is, as I previously mentioned, built to be adaptive to accommodate inherent delays in supply chains or changes to the plan, such as partnering with a private project, i.e. one of the wind projects that we have in town, or other opportunities that present themselves really to benefit the program, whether it's financial or make things more efficient or something similar like that. All right, so now I'm just going to get into some quick overviews of the projects that are active right now. This one right here is our Strawberry Hill Road sewer expansion project. It's the first significant sewer expansion project that we have undertaken. We are at about 95% complete on this. All the in-road work has been completed. This is the project that we did along the area in yellow, along the Vineyard Wind route, and partnered with that program, really coordinated with that program, that project. We will be doing some additional construction on this project this fall to install sewer service risers, really to make the lateral locations closer in elevation to the surface, so that it makes it a little easier for property owners to connect when they come back to connect sometime this spring. So that work will be happening this fall. In addition, we are still waiting on the electrical service for the single pump station that's installed as part of this project. As you may recall, we installed a sewer pump station at the intersection of Strawberry Hill Road and Craigville Beach Road. All the infrastructure is in place. We just have not received the electrical service from Eversource yet. So that is anticipated to be completed this fall, and at that point, the infrastructure will be active. And in addition, this project, as I said, was coordinated with the Vineyard Wind effort. They are responsible for the paving of the roadways. They've already completed Craigville Beach Road and Strawberry Hill Road. And they will be completing Finney's Lane and Waquaket Lane from Waquaket Lane to Route 132 in November. Second project we currently have active under construction is the Route 28 East project. This is really one of the foundational projects of the program. I'm sure you've all driven down Route 28 and past Finney's Lane and saw the large construction effort ongoing right at that intersection. And that is what we call our Finney's Lane pump station, which is going to be really the cornerstone of the infrastructure that we install. Everything to the west, all the flow to the west of that pump station that we collect in the program will go through that pump station. Approximately 8,000 to 9,000 properties at the end of the program. So it's a key piece of infrastructure we're installing. There's also some sewer expansion along that. Finney's Lane from 28 to where Finney's Lane meets with Waquaket Lane is being installed as part of that project, as well as a portion of the sewers along Route 28 and force mains from the pump station to the wastewater treatment plant. As far as status of the project, we've completed a bunch of work in the spring, but we were back out doing in-road construction. We started last week, right after Labor Day. So we started with some localized work on Finney's Lane near the pump station, and we'll be starting work again back in Route 28 on Wednesday. Actually, is when we're at Wednesday when we're anticipating.
It was to have been today, right? But it was pushed back a couple of days.
It was originally supposed to be today, and it was pushed back 2 days because the contractor had a machine break. So that set them back a couple of days. So the plan for the winter is to complete the sewer work on Finney's Lane. They're expecting this winter. February is the end of the contract. So right now, that's when we're expecting that. The end of the contract targets when the sewer work has to be completed. There's some paving work that has to be done after, that has to be done later, but we're expecting the sewer work to be completed in the February timeframe. They will be.
Griffin,
Yes.
Quick question. Is part of Finney's Lane, but not all of it, has cable conduits underneath it, right?
That's correct. So I'll go back one slide. The portions of Finney's Lane that are shown on this yellow slide.
Yeah.
So right in this location, if you can see my cursor,
Yeah.
this is where all the cable conduit is. So really, if you're talking Finney's Lane, it's really from where the split with Waquaket Lane is to 132. That portion has the duct bank, and then the southern portion, kind of after the split going to 28, is part of the Route 28 East project and doesn't have the duct bank under it. That's just a sewer project that's ongoing in that section.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And that's a great point. So to that point, the final paving on Finney's Lane will be a little later on this section because the sewer work is not completed here. There's still a section of sewer that has to go in. Again, we expect that to be completed this winter. We require 90 days after the last excavation, what we call a settlement period, to allow for any settling to occur before the final paving happens. And really that's so that the final paving will be done in a smooth manner and not see the settlement occur that inevitably occurs between the time we finalize and backfill and everything like that and actually pave.
And the paving for that section will not be paid for by Avangrid.
That's
Because
correct.
there's no conduit underneath,
That's correct. Yep, that's part of our contract.
right?
And then just a quick overview of status of the Finney's Lane pump station, which again is part of this project. The structure construction is advancing. They actually poured the attic slab last week, so most of the structure is there at this point. And we're anticipating substantial completion of the pump station this winter. So now that the structure is there, things are really going to speed up as far as completing that project, which is really exciting from an engineer's perspective because it's a cool project. All right, the next project we have in the hopper here is the Centerville Village Sewer Expansion Project. Similar to the Strawberry Hill project, this project is identified along the proposed Park City Wind onshore duck bank route. So the same concept here where the sewer installation would coordinate with the duck bank installation for that proposed project. And then the wind developer would be responsible for the paving of the roadways. As far as the sewer project goes, it's currently at 75% design. We're currently in the process of reviewing the 75% design. We submitted our SRF loan commitment application. It was actually last month. It says next month. It should have been last month. We submitted that. And and the town council back in April, as part of the capital improvement plan, appropriated $30.9 million for this project, and the appropriation number is listed right there. We're anticipating bidding of this project this winter or spring, and we're anticipating construction to commence next fall. The area in purple in the figure is the route. It again follows the Park City Wind onshore duck bank route, effectively starting at Craigville Beach, working its way north up Craigville Beach Road through Main Street, Centerville, up Old Stage, and then turning up Shoot Flying Hill Road.
Right.
So Griffin, just a question. So
Yes,
the
sir.
Park City Wind project, as you know, is still in permitting,
Yes,
and
sir.
their power purchase agreements are up in the air. They haven't formally defaulted, but they've said publicly that they need to renegotiate with the state. Assuming that process drags out, what does that do to the timing for the sewer project through Centerville?
Yeah, that's a great question, Hector, and I'm happy you asked it. So a little bit unknown, to be completely honest with you. So
Right.
the best information I've received from Avangrid is that they expect to start construction in the fall of 2024. So from our perspective, we're operating under that assumption as far as preparing the design documents, preparing the bid documents, getting the project out to bid. And then when we get to awarding a bid, we're going to have to make that decision with the best available information that we have. What really drives schedule here from the sewer perspective are two things. One is ultimately what Avangrid's schedule is, but we have a deadline for our SRF loan of June 30th to have contracts in place in order to receive those loans. That's just the deadlines that they have for those projects.
2024?
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
Okay.
So we have to proceed and kind of backdate that schedule and meet that target. But if, for instance, the Park City Wind project just does not happen or is delayed for 2 to 3 years, we'll have to make a decision as to what the best way to proceed is. And I don't know what that decision will be at this point.
And one option is not to lay the sewers on that route until Park City is ready with their construction.
That's correct. One option would be that. One option would be to do some portion of it and some portions to wait, so there could be kind of a hybrid option there. We have not made a decision as to what that decision would be, and there would be, it's a little bit of a policy decision that we would have to get some input on.
Right. And we've several people have tried to talk to this Connecticut DPU and have gotten nowhere in terms of getting information about what is the status of the PPAs. Likewise, Avangrid says, we're in conversations with them. It's my guess, and probably yours too, that the fall of 2024 is a little aggressive in terms of timing, given the fact that it may well be that they'll have to rebid those projects with the state of Connecticut, like they're having to rebid the Commonwealth project with the state of Massachusetts. And if they have to rebid, that's going to push things back a couple of years.
Yep,
will-
that's all very good points. And again, we're operating under the best available information we have at this
Right.
point.
Right.
Because we have to be ready.
I do have a
How will
question.
that impact on the loan?
Yeah, so if we do not utilize the loan this year, we did not apply for this project in the upcoming SRF cycle. So realistically, we would probably get pushed back 2 cycles, unless SRF was able to give us an extension, which they may because of the uncertainty. We have not had that conversation with them. So that would be something that we would have to work directly with SRF staff on.
Griffin, I have a question for you.
Yes.
These 2 projects, the one previous and this one, are north-south into Craigville Beach. And Craigville Beach is pretty open to the ocean. So my always concern, since I live in Katuitt, is that it'd be great to have the sewer line go further into the most polluted area, which is Prince Cove, North Bay, Katuitt Harbor. And instead of continually putting huge amounts of resources into this north-south areas of Craigville Beach and some other areas that are more open to the ocean water. Because you may not know this, but the 3 or 4 bay system is extremely polluted. I row there every day, and there is very often a sewage smell that we row right through. And so I would really think that at some point in time, we have to look at the water quality of certain estuaries to determine how quickly we get sewer into that area.
Yep. Thank you very much for those comments. I absolutely know and appreciate and understand the impairment in the 3 bays. It's the 3rd most impaired embayment on Cape Cod. And one of the largest goals of phase 1 of the plan is to get sewer out to the 3 bays watershed. And actually the next project that I'll talk about does that. This half of the Centerville Village project was actually originally in phase 2, the lower half. And it was actually expedited in order to be able to get the infrastructure into the roadways, because frankly, it becomes very challenging to do so after the duck banks are in. And that was the same decision and conclusion and decision that was made with the Vineyard Wind project. We absolutely are still 100% moving forward with and have a high priority for getting the sewer expansion out to the western part of town. There has been no delays in the progress of that as a result of this.
Yeah, I understand that. There are a couple of projects that are a little questionable. One is the Long Beach project, which will connect 9 homes for, I think, $9 million. So it's just interesting to me on the allocation of resources.
Yeah, so on the Long Beach project, it's definitely not 9 homes. I think it's closer to about 100. I'm not
Okay.
And the intent of that was to build on the investment of the infrastructure that we put in as part of this project and the Vineyard Wind project. But I hear you loud and clear on your comments, and I don't disagree with anything you're saying. And again, one of our largest goals in the planning of the CWMP was to make sure that we had significant progress in the 3 bays watershed, which, going back to this map here. Can you see my cursor?
Yes,
Yeah, the Three Bays watershed boundary is right about here. And our wastewater plant is here. The edge of our existing collection system is here. So getting the 5 miles out to this area is a large achievement, frankly. And then additionally, the sewering that we're going to do around Prince Cove as part of one of the last phase 1 projects we have. It's definitely significant progress in that watershed.
And so the sewer project will only partially cover Prince Cove and nothing else? Is that what
No.
I'm seeing?
No,
Or
that's just
is
phase
the-
1 of the project.
Okay, and so
Yeah,
is the.
so this is the full program here.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's different colors and different levels.
That's correct. So the
Okay.
red shows phase 1, so it shows that we get to and around Prince Cove in phase 1. And again, if I don't have the watershed boundaries here, but if you had the watershed boundaries, it would be right about in this location. It's when groundwater is actually moving to the 3 bays, and when sewering in that area is actually improving the 3 bays.
And then all the other sections of Katuitt and Grand Island, well, Grand Island can't be part of it, but the other sections of Katuitt below that dark green area will never get sewered.
We're not currently in the plan to get sewer. And the sewer expansion plan is designed based off of the findings of the Massachusetts Estuaries Project, which effectively identified the areas that you need to mitigate nitrogen in order to remediate the impaired water bodies. And the areas that they identified were really were all the areas that we have shown in the plan. And really part of that is the Marston's Mills River kind of coming right through
Right.
this. And it's a
100%
direct
agree with
conduit
that.
right into the 3 bays.
And so the other areas of white in the Katuitt Harbor
Right.
won't ever get sewered.
Not currently planned to get sewered, and based on the modeling, they don't need to in order to achieve the TMDLs.
So what year was that data compiled? I'm just curious.
I don't have the year. I'm not sure the year of the 3 bays report.
Okay.
what was the name of that report again?
It's the Massachusetts Estuaries Project. It's an attachment to the Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan.
Okay,
And
thanks.
what that did, it was done by the school, by UMass Dartmouth, SMAS, the Coastal Sciences program at SMAS.
Yeah.
Dr. Brian Howes was the lead on that. And what it did was it identified the land uses within the watershed, and it identified the areas where the sources of nitrogen are. And it also set the total maximum daily load, which is effectively the nitrogen budget for the water body of interest, which in this case would be the 3 bays, right? And it said if you remove this amount of nitrogen from these areas, you will have a healthy estuary.
So just from my perspective, if you look at West Bay over there, you have a huge green section of West Bay.
Yes.
If you are ever in West Bay, it's pristine water. So you look in Katuitt Harbor and it's brown. So I just puzzle sometimes as to how these things happen. I know there's a lot of affluent people in West Bay, but it is crystal clear over there. And
right. So
yeah, go ahead.
So some of that has to do with the hydrodynamics of the system as well. And I am not claiming to be an engineer, a water scientist. But my understanding is a lot of it has to do with the hydrodynamics of the system and the way the water moves through the system and the openings on either end of the system as well. So I'd be happy to share some of the findings of the Massachusetts Estuaries Project with you, or even go into more detail with you on it. But that's what the science told us needed to be achieved in order to achieve the TMDLs in the watershed.
Yeah. Yeah, because as I look at it, if you really want to mitigate the really bad water, it would to the left side instead of the right side of this whole, the green should go down on the left side as opposed to the right side to make sure that, I mean, from what I understand, we've talked to Derek in the Harbor Master area and Katuitt Bay system, mostly Katuitt and North Bay is the most used harbor in all of the town of Barnstable. And to have that be the most utilized estuary system in our town to get the not as many resources is a real shame.
Okay, I appreciate the comment. We will certainly take a look at it, and continue to study that. One thing I will add, is, it comes down to nitrogen remediation. You want to look at a lot of the densest areas in order to remove the maximum amount of nitrogen and really it, and to do it efficiently. And so as for instance, the West Bay side and kind of the Osterville area, there's a lot of density on Main Street there, which actually, it ends up being a big math problem at the end of the day, as you're trying to remove as much nitrogen as possible from the system.
Right, I get
And
it.
this was a much less dense area here. And the modeling indicated that the, effectively the math problem worked out, right? So I certainly appreciate the observations and we'll spend
Yeah.
additional time looking into it.
Yeah, we'd just be curious to know at what point in time that density information was done in comparison to what now currently is residing in Katuitt.
Oh, I can definitely address that for sure. When we did the comprehensive wastewater management plan in 2020, there was a full land use update that was done as part of that.
Okay,
The original model was done at least a decade before that, but they actually we paid for SMAS to redo the model with the latest land use data that was available at the time. So it was in 2020, it was an accurate portrayal of what was occurring in the water.
and so I apologize for being really questioning this whole process, but
That's completely fine.
does the land mass flow take into account the water flow?
Yes, that's what it's built on.
Okay,
So we have the water use data for every parcel in town, and that's in the model. What's also in the model is lawn areas, impervious areas, and stuff like that, which helps drive the nutrient calculation.
Okay. And does it include the height of the septic systems in addition to where the bay systems are?
It does not. It's a groundwater model. So really what it does is it inputs a value. And again, I'm not a modeler or a hydrogeologist, but my understanding is it inputs a value for each property of wastewater and therefore nutrients that it puts into the ground. And the model sums all that up and compounds it and models where the plume will go. And based off that information and understanding of where the groundwater table, how the groundwater table moves and how it gets to the embayment system, it tabulates what the input into the system is. And that is checked against what we're measuring in the system. And there's a close correlation to that. So that's how they know that the model is accurate.
Okay, that's great information. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Any other questions on this? All right. So next project we have in the hopper after the Centerville Village project is the Route 28 West Sewer Expansion project. So as I alluded to a couple minutes ago, this project will extend sewer from the limit of sewer on Route 28 after the 28 East project, which will be at Finney's Lane, from Finney's Lane all the way to Route 149. So again, the main goal, one of the major goals of phase one was to get sewer out into the 3 bays. And this project was how we identified to do that. And really it puts major sewer infrastructure in Route 28. And we like to refer to Route 28 as the backbone of the project. Because really that's where we're going to be conveying wastewater from the western part of the town to the eastern part of the town where our wastewater treatment plant is. The preliminary design of this is ongoing. We are currently reviewing the sewer alignments and siting pump station locations. We're evaluating the need to add some additional lengths of sewer to this project in order to accommodate where our pump station sites are going to go, and really taking a hard look at the topography and what it tells us the best way to implement this project is. And we did submit our SRF project evaluation form in August for this. So that is our request for SRF funding, which we will find out in the late winter, early spring, if we are listed on the intended use plan for next year's plan. We expect to commence construction on this project in 2025. And we do expect the construction ask to be in this year's capital plan, which I'll have a quick overview at the end.
Griffin, just a quick question. I thought you were putting in sewer on 28 west of Finney's starting on Wednesday.
East of Finney's.
Oh, east of Finney's.
That's right. So actually the sewers are in from Finney's Lane to West Main Street already. What we're doing next week is we're going back and putting the laterals in, just to finish those sewers up, which are basically the small pipe that goes from the sewer main to the house. So that will basically complete those sections of sewer. And then from there, the remainder of the fall, we're going to be installing the sewer force mains all the way to the wastewater treatment plant, which will allow that pump station to function and to pump the wastewater to the wastewater treatment plant. That project stops at Finney's Lane, and then this project picks that up and it goes west.
In 2025.
In 2025.
Okay. And what is the time period to reach Route 149 approximately?
We're expecting this to be about a 2.5 year project.
Okay.
So the 2027 timeframe.
Okay.
Other project we're actively working on is the Finney's Lane sewer expansion project. This is really the first neighborhood project that we have in the program. And I know this is confusing because we just sewered Finney's Lane, right? This is really what we are kind of rebranding to the Finney's Lane neighborhood sewer expansion project. And it really is the neighborhoods on either side of Finney's Lane, from Route 28 to Route 132. So the areas in kind of lavender on this figure show all those neighborhoods. There's about 50 roadways in this project, and many of them are private roads, interestingly enough. There are about 630 properties that will connect in this project. This is one of the biggest phase one projects that we have as far as connections go. Our internal design team has completed a 30% design of this, and we're in the process of retaining a consultant to finalize the design. We have started the process, and again, I alluded to the private roads. We've started the process of taking utility easements over these private roadways in order to allow us access to these roadways to install this infrastructure. And almost equally as important, it allows us to certify title to the roadways such that we can actually achieve the SRF loans. Without an accurate chain of title, and an easement is perfectly acceptable, we're not able to get those SRF loans, nor should we really be digging up the roadways because they're private property. So that's already started to occur. We've actually taken utility easements over 18 of the 40 private roads in this project, and we continue to make progress towards taking the remainder of them. And this was going to be a theme that we're going to see as we continue to move forward into these neighborhood projects, because as I'm sure you're all well aware, there are a number of private roads in the community, and we're going to need utility easements in order to put sewers in them. And so the decision to date has been to take utility easements and in lieu of taking the roadway in order to get access to those roads.
Griffin, just a quick question.
Yes, sir.
And this is a little bit of a tangent, but you say the private roads, the private roads are private property. But is there a deed or some kind of legal document that evidences the ownership?
Yeah, and so actually that's a very good question. It's different with every one of these private roads, actually. And that's why we've only done 18 of the 40 of them so far, because we have to run a title report on every one of these roads,
right,
to find out who are the folks that have interest in the road. And so we have retained outside counsel and outside title examiners to run title searches on each one of these private roadways,
okay,
accumulate a list of people with interest in them, notify these people, and make sure that our order of taking has all of them listed on it.
okay.
So it's actually quite a bit of work in order to do these takings. So we started this quite early. Actually, we started this process about a year ago. We're about halfway through it at this point.
Okay.
Some of the roadways require some additional survey to actually produce taking drawings. So we're doing that right now in parallel with some of the other ones that had good, accurate plans, or maybe they were land court roadways that were pretty clear as the definition of the right of ways for them. So there's a lot of work that actually goes into these private road takings. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of title research that's necessary.
Wow. Okay.
Is there a cost associated with the utility easement? Is there an advantage to doing that rather than purchasing the roads? Or, I mean, what's the advantage?
Yeah, Chris, thanks for asking that question. So yes, there is actually not the only cost to the town in doing that is the cost to run the title reports and have the legal fees associated with producing the documents. The town council has the ability to vote to take the utility easements. We have done appraisals, which indicate that there is no award of damages to the property owners, because it actually will increase their value of their property based on the appraisals. So there's no cost to acquire the utility easement.
Okay.
We're going to pave the roads at the end of the project, but we will not be responsible for the roadway in perpetuity as you would with the taking of a roadway. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, would it be advantageous for the town to take the roadways in any case, or is a utility easement adequate? Looking forward into the future.
Yeah, so that's a great policy question. And it is exactly that. For the purposes of executing the sewer project, the utility easement is perfectly acceptable. It gives us the access we need. We're able to get the loans that we need and able to sign off that we have clear title to do the project. So it's perfectly acceptable for the sewer project. Whether the community has the desire to take the roadways and be responsible for them in perpetuity is really a policy decision that would have to be made.
Okay, and the utility easement gives you access for maintenance and repairs in perpetuity?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Yeah.
It does.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
On that topic, Chris and Griffin, going forward, we'll be having a workshop in the near future with the town council to talk specifically about private roads and correlation with the sewer expansion program.
Okay, great. I'd like to attend that if you can send the information.
Sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for that, Mark. All right, so similar to the 28 West project, we're anticipating construction for this project to start in 2025. You'll see this project on our capital plan for our requests for this upcoming year. And we have submitted our SRF project evaluation form, which is effectively our SRF application for this. So again, similar to the last project, we'll find out in a couple months if we're listed on the intended use plan for this project. I'll go quickly through these other ones. These are just other projects that have funding associated with them already. And there are in some active stage of planning. So the Old Craigville Road, Old Yarmouth Road, and Shoot Flying Hill Road projects, we have contracts in place for survey to be completed to map these areas, which is the first step in the design process. Those surveys should be completed this fall, and then we'll be starting the design process. Design funding is appropriated for all of these projects. The Long Pond area project similarly has design funding appropriated for it, and we have completed survey already on it, and we're continuing to work through the design effort on that project. And the Long Beach project, which was mentioned earlier, there was preliminary design funding approved for it, not proposed, that's a typo, in 2020, the 2024 budget. We will be hiring a surveyor to start the survey to map that area so that we can just start the design process, and we're expecting construction to start in 2027. Right. So we talked a lot about sewer expansion. I do want to talk about one of the key pieces of our program, which is our water pollution control facility. Without the water pollution control facility, the sewers don't do a whole heck of a lot for us. We do have an active project right now that's an upgrade project to improve the solids processing facility. So all the solids that are generated by the wastewater plant, as well as septage that is delivered to the plant from when you have your septic system pumped, goes through this facility and gets treated at this facility, and then gets trucked away from this facility and disposed of at a facility in Rhode Island. We're in the process of completing this project. This was about a $12 million upgrade to this facility, and the project should be completed before the end of this calendar year.
So Griffin,
Yes.
what I'm understanding is that our systems can't handle the capacity that they're getting, so we have to offload it someplace else.
No. So as far as the solids go, there are a number of ways to manage solids that are produced from wastewater. So the wastewater treatment plant, the way it manages solids is it stores them and brings them off site. And this is a pretty typical way to manage solids from a municipal wastewater treatment plant. And basically what happens is we truck it off site and it gets brought to an incinerator to be incinerated. There are other options such as composting. There is what's called a digester that you can build, which digests the solids and reduces the amount of solids, but you still ultimately need to get rid of some of it. That's really cost prohibitive. And at the beginning of this this upgrade, we did an evaluation to look at what's the correct technology moving forward for the facility, and it was determined that the best technology for the facility is to continue to effectively store, and we process and store the solids. We put it into a truck and it gets brought to the incineration facility.
I gotcha. That's a great explanation. Thank you.
You're very welcome. The next project is our nitrogen removal and headworks improvement project. This is a mouthful, but what I would characterize this as our big our water pollution control facility upgrade that we're going to do as part of this program. Really, the key to this is this is a significant upgrade to our wastewater plant with the intent of reducing the nitrogen discharge from the plant to 3 milligrams per liter or less. Right now, the plant is permitted to discharge 10 milligrams per liter. We do about on average 6 milligrams per liter. So one of the most cost-effective ways to reduce our nitrogen generated from the facility is to reduce the discharge, right? And 3 milligrams per liter is effectively the maximum you can reduce nitrogen from the type of plant we have under current technology. So what is the upgrade we're going to do? The upgrade is to convert the nitrogen reduction process to what's called a 4-stage Barnstable process, which is a biological process. and adding a membrane biological reactor for advanced treatment to the facility. This will, again, bring nitrogen from the facility down to really the level at which technology can bring it down to at this point, about 3 milligrams per liter. What that does for us is it reduces the amount of sewer expansion really we need to do in the Hyannis area in order to make sure we still achieve the total maximum daily loads in Lewis Bay, which is ultimately the receiving waters from our wastewater treatment plant. After a number of years of traveling through the groundwater. In order to accomplish this, we have to also upgrade our headworks facility, which is effectively the building that all of the pipes in the system come into, and is the initial treatment for the facility. What needs to happen in order to do the membrane biological reactors, we need to improve the screening in this facility. Our existing headworks facility is actually it's due for replacement anyway, and it was part of our plan later in phase 1, and so we've brought this up in order to partner it with this and do kind of more of a comprehensive upgrade. This project's conceptual design is currently in review, and we're advancing towards we expect in the next couple of months to have the preliminary design report for it. The SRF project evaluation form was submitted for this project in this cycle, so we will find out in the next couple months if we are going to receive SRF funding for this project. And we expect to start construction in 2025 on this project as well. Another important thing that we have ongoing at the Water Pollution Control Facility is a facility study. So we studied the facility very detailed as we developed the comprehensive wastewater management plan. However, our permit requires an additional study to be conducted basically by a third-party engineer to develop really a roadmap for the wastewater treatment plant our permit requires through phase 1, and we have asked our consultant to develop a roadmap through the whole comprehensive wastewater management plan. So this looks at everything at the plant from, high level, what should our nitrogen process be that informs the nitrogen removal project, to is the roof on this building good? And when does it need to be replaced? And so it looks at every piece of infrastructure in the facility and puts together a plan for how we're going to proceed with that facility into the future. It also looks at the potential needs for additional treatment or additional improvements at the facility in the future as a result of additional flow or as a result of potential additional regulatory requirements, such as contaminants of emerging concern, like PFAS, for instance. Now, currently, we don't have a PFAS requirement to monitor or to treat to at the wastewater treatment plant, but we expect at some point that may happen. And in addition, we have to continue to monitor effluent options, and additional treatment and other processes are maybe part of that solution. I promised a picture of the capital plan. This is a screenshot from the FY24 capital improvement plan. So a number of the projects
before you move on, would you go back to the yeah.
Absolutely.
With the upgrades to reduce the nitrogen to 3 milligrams per liter, you had mentioned that if we reach that goal, we might be able to decrease the amount of sewer expansion. Have you given it is there any estimate about
the
kinds of contraction of the sewer plant that we might have?
No, I should have clarified that. Our plan calls for us. So the CWMP assumes we reduce the nitrogen to 3 milligrams per liter at that facility. Right. If we don't, we would need to do more sewer expansion in Lewis Bay in order to have the same removal of nitrogen from that system. So our plan basically requires us to do this in order to achieve the TMDLs. But if we didn't do this at the facility, we would have to do more sewer expansion in that watershed to make the big math problem work. Does that make sense?
So you're saying we need to achieve the 3 milligrams
Yes,
in order to achieve the TMDLs?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And does that apply to other places besides Lewis Bay?
No, because our wastewater treatment plant is in the Lewis Bay watershed.
Okay,
So it's not a consideration in other watersheds because the discharge from our wastewater treatment plant goes into the groundwater
yeah,
that's in the Lewis Bay watershed and eventually
right.
into that system. So it's part of the equation for figuring out how to reach the total maximum daily load in that system.
that's, yes, understandable. That's great.
Thank you.
So while this is going to be a very expensive upgrade, it is a lot cheaper than sewering significantly more areas within the Lewis Bay watershed. And so ultimately the decision was made that that was probably the right approach for the plan.
And what is the cost? You're gonna show us this now?
I am. So this is the capital plan from last year. Again, this is from last year. This has not been updated for next year.
Right,
The projections for that project, it was broken into two projects last year, was
There it is.
$65 million.
Mhm.
That number will likely be higher in this once we finalize the design. I don't have a final estimate at this point. I just wanted to revisit this and really, the purpose for having this was to show the numbers that we approved last year and to show last year's projections of the numbers that we plan to submit for this year. And really to look at that bottom number here, this is one of the largest submissions we're anticipating, at least in phase one. And it's principally because of the nitrogen upgrades at the plant, but also the Route 28 West project is a very large project,
Mhm.
as is the Finney's Lane project. And again, this is in the capital plan from last year. It's a screenshot from that.
but what you're saying is the fiscal 2025 column, those numbers will increase in the next capital plan.
Yeah, inevitably these numbers increase each year, if nothing else, due to inflation and advancement in the design process. The nitrogen project has had some additional work added to it, as well as increased costs as a result of inflation that have been larger than were anticipated at the time the estimate was developed last year.
Right.
But
So
I don't have a number to share with you tonight. We're in the process of finalizing that.
But the 135.4 million, that total will definitely rise next time around.
We're expecting that will be the case. To what,
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
at this time.
Yeah. Okay.
I have a question for Mark. How are we going to finance that 135?
So looking at our projections for the CWMP program, we do plan on submitting all of those projects to the Mass Clean Water Trust and financing them through low interest loans through the State Revolving Loan Fund. And then to pay those loans back, we're going to use the existing resources that we've created to pay off those loans, which includes meal tax, rooms tax, general fund contribution, sewer assessments, and so forth. So that's built into our plan right now. We have the existing resources to cover the anticipated loan payments on all those projects.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My only comment on all of this is that you need to think about cleaning up the really bad stuff at some point in time. And so you're leaving the Prince Cove project, and maybe it has to be that way because you get to get the sewer line there, but you're leaving that project to the last bit. And once you let that aquifer die, there's no coming back. So in my mind, we really need to think about how do we prioritize our extension, our projects, to make sure that there's certain estuaries that aren't dead.
Yeah,
That's,
I agree 100% with what you said, Wendy, and I firmly believe that is what we are doing. It is really a limitation on getting the pipe out there. You know, sewer installation is slow. It just is, and there's really not a tried and true way to expedite that, right? It's you got to dig big holes and put big pipes in the ground and then build a lot of infrastructure. So it takes time. The Prince Cove project that you referenced, that is programmed right behind when the Route 28 East project or West project is completed in 2027. And the reason for that is because it's basically an extension of that project. So once we get out to the 149 area, we're going to continue to expand out in the western portion of the project of the town. So again, we do kind of have to build the tentacles out in order to get out there. But once we are out there, that is the western part of town is like you said, one of the most impaired estuary that we have there in Pompanesett Bay. And so it is a high priority for us to get sewer out into that area of town.
So, so just following on from Wendy's comment, so Griffin, you may know, CFAC issued its capital investment plan report, I think it was back in April. And in that report, we went on record saying that the most important criterion for CWMP spending must be to target those areas of Barnstable that have the greatest need. And that is to remove nitrogen from the saltwater bays, phosphorus from the freshwater ponds. It seems to me what Wendy is saying is that the Three Bays area is certainly an area of great need, if not greatest need, for the town. So just to ask a question, does it make sense to reorient resources from, say, the Centerville project and build out the Route 28 West project out to 149 sooner than 2027? Start it in 2024 as opposed to 2025 and accelerate that by a year.
Right. So there's two things there. One, the Route 28 West infrastructure can't be functional until the Route 28 East infrastructure is.
Right.
The design will not be ready for 2024, frankly.
Right.
It's a project that is at preliminary design right now. So it's going to take another year to finalize the design process for that. And then the timeline to build the sewers in that project, it's really pretty set. It's going to take 2 to 2.5 years, and there's little we can do to expedite that from a practical perspective, from a logistical perspective. We can't work 24 hours a day, right? It's just not really a practical option. We are working within Route 28, which comes with traffic management issues.
Sure.
Right. So there are a number of logistical challenges associated with that.
So you can't redirect resources from Centerville, what we're calling the Park City Wind sewer route, and you've renamed it. Even if you stop developing that piece of the project.
That project is not slowing down the development of the Route 28 West project.
Yeah.
No, they're separate projects. They're worked by, we have separate consultants designing them even. So they're focusing on separate efforts, right? Our team's managing both of them. Yeah, there's very little link between the schedule for the Centerville Village project and the 28 West project, other than their two large sewer expansion projects that are going to bisect each other at Old Stage Road. Their schedules are not dictated by each other.
Okay, but going back to CFAC's statement about targeting spending to the areas of greatest need, it seems to me DPW supports that. DPW is, in fact, you're probably running the CWMP according to that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the Park
Yeah.
City Wind Route is a great need for the program. It is an
Mhm.
area that is identified as needing sewers in order to remove wastewater from nitrogen from the Centerville River watershed, which is also impaired. It is not impaired as bad as Three Bays is,
Right.
but it is also an impaired watershed that we need to remediate as part of the program. And the areas on this route are part of that solution. It's also part of the solution to improve impairment of Lake Wequaquet. So the west side, the northern portion of the project is Shoe Flying Hill Road, which is on the upgradient side of Lake Wequaquet. So removing sewers from those properties is, removing nitrogen from those properties is going to help remediate Lake Wequaquet as well.
Yeah, yeah. Which is crucial, of course.
Right.
Are
So
you
it's not
done-
just putting sewers in just to put sewers in there.
Yeah,
They are identified areas that need to be sewered in order to achieve goals in that watershed.
yeah. So is this your last slide? Can we ask?
I have one more slide,
Okay,
and it's really just about communications.
okay.
So one thing we've been actively working on over the past year plus is trying to improve communications of the program. In the fall of 2022, we hired a communications manager, which I understand will be joining you, I think, later at your next meeting.
Right.
Her name's Kelly Colopy, to be our central point of contact for the public and help develop a communication strategy for the program. We're a bunch of engineers, communications, not our best strong suit. So we hired a professional in the matter, right? So she's our central point of contact for anything about this program. And then she taps into our team of engineers to help assist her with technical questions. She's a great resource for us at this point. BarnstableWaterResources.com is kind of our one-stop shop for everything related to this program and beyond the program, everything water resource related in the community. Kelly's actually spent a lot of time rebuilding the homepage and making it more user-friendly. I'd encourage you to visit the website if you have any time within the past 2 years, and now you'll see it's definitely more functional and improved navigation and more user-friendly. And then also obviously the Barnstable e-news, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, have all sorts of information in it, not just sewer related, but all of our construction updates are in there.
Right.
So with that, I will stop sharing my screen. If there's any slides that anybody wants me to go back to.
When will that homeowner's guide be out?
Yeah, so we're hoping before the end of the year.
Great.
Yeah, certainly in advance of when people are supposed to start connecting. We've done a number of iterations internally, and we're just continuing to refine that.
Thank you.
So I have some geeky finance questions. Is now the time to put those out there? Yeah.
Absolutely.
So and other members of the committee jump in, please. In fact, I'm willing to hold off if Neil or Chuck or Chris has a question. Oh, and I see Betty Lutke is on. Hello, Betty.
Hi, Betty. I have a question to start this. I noticed that we have submitted an application for the to the state for the DEP on the watershed. Can you explain that and how
Yes.
how it might impact on us?
Absolutely. So I actually meant to address that in my presentation. So thank you for asking that question. I believe it was September 1st, we submitted our application for a watershed permit for the community. So we're at the beginning stages of that process. The new regulations that were issued at the beginning of the summer by DEP requires communities with impaired watersheds in Southeast New England to apply for a watershed permit, which is basically our roadmap for as to how we're going to improve those impaired watersheds. We've submitted our application. As far as I know, we might be the first that did.
Is that document posted on the website somewhere?
So I'll have to check to see if it is. The
Okay.
document we submitted for our application is our CWMP, which is on the
Okay.
website. We
Okay,
also
okay.
submitted a cover letter explaining
Yeah,
how
yeah,
we felt
okay.
that we met everything. But we are leveraging our existing comprehensive wastewater management plan to the maximum extent. We're basically submitting that, saying this addresses everything that you needed us to address, which it does.
Right.
And we met with DEP in advance, and they kind of blessed that solution, right? They blessed that approach. We expect some comments back, and we'll address the comments, and then we hope to have our watershed permit in relatively short timeline. Really, right now it's a waiting game to see how long it takes for them to review the application materials.
But further to Lillian's question, so when we get the permit, what does that mean, practically speaking, for the town and for the CWMP and for the need to upgrade homeowners' septic systems in town?
Right. So our understanding of the Title V regulations and the watershed permit regulations are that once we receive our watershed permit, our CWMP is once again memorialized as our plan for addressing the nutrient issues, and the areas that are identified for sewers will have to be sewered. And the areas that aren't identified for sewers will, as far as we understand, not need to upgrade their septic systems. That is the understanding we have from DEP staff at this point.
I guess I'm a little confused by that. Could you repeat it?
Right. So the new Title V regulations that were issued at the same time as the watershed permit regulations, require all properties within a impaired watershed to install an innovative alternative septic system, unless you have a watershed permit that maps out what your plan is for addressing the impairment in that watershed. And our understanding from our discussion with DEP is that once we have an approved watershed permit, that means that the parcels that are going to be sewered will have to be sewered, right? That's part of our permit requirement. And anybody who is not shown as being sewered is not going to need to upgrade their septic systems to an innovative alternative. So effectively, it takes the mandate away to upgrade everybody to an innovative alternative in lieu of basically implementing our plan.
So basically what you're telling me is that, for example, let's just take Prinsco, because that's my home ground.
Mhm.
They'll be in the sewer system plan, so they won't have to upgrade, or they won't have to do any alternative systems because they'll be in the upgrade.
That's my understanding from the DEP regulations, yes.
And so the rest of Katuitt will have to do the upgrade.
Nope. Our understanding is that the watershed permit effectively means that once we receive a watershed permit based off of our sewer expansion plan, it effectively means that the people that are not scheduled to be sewered will not have to upgrade to the innovative alternative septic systems. If we do not have a watershed plan, everybody will have to. And we won't.
Across town, so every structure,
every parcel,
every property in
right. Title
Barnstable.
V's would no longer be allowed,
Right,
and you would have to install an innovative alternative septic system.
right,
The sewer expansion plan basically, and again, this is our understanding of the regulations, which are
Right.
new and have not
Yeah.
been litigated at this point. So we'll see if that stays moving forward. But our understanding of the regulations at this point are that you will not, if you're not in a sewer expansion area, you will not have to upgrade your septic system to an innovative alternative. You may choose to, and it might be the right thing to do.
Well,
And the town board of health could pass a bylaw mandating that if they so choose, and I'm not suggesting that's on the table, but right now our understanding of the regulations is that's not the requirement.
Well, that's really interesting, because I thought, and I could just be totally not understanding this whole concept, but I thought with the DEP regulations, depending on how close you were to an estuary, you would have to do some mitigation.
Right, and that's what the Title V regulations say, unless you get a watershed permit, which identifies how you're going to remediate the embayment. And so basically, if you're in an impaired embayment, an impaired watershed, unless we have a watershed plan that covers the plan for that watershed, everybody in the watershed will need to have an innovative alternative. But once we have a watershed plan, you don't need to. Our sewer expansion plan
So the rest of,
overrides that.
so the rest of Katuitt, will they have to do alternative septic systems?
No,
No,
Oh. they
No.
won't.
no.
that's
Okay,
our understanding of the regulation, is once we have a watershed permit, there will not be the need to
that's
have
what
the
I
innovative
understand.
alternative.
I just wanted to reiterate the question because
Yep.
this has been going on for a while, so. Okay,
So Griffin, I do have a couple questions about the interplay between sewers and cable conduit installations. So back in November 2022, the town issued comments for the Commonwealth Wind MEPA process. And then one of the points in that 10-page letter, the town wrote, and this is a quote, "The very size of the conduits will add considerable expenses for sewer and other utility installation, maintenance, and replacement along the proposed routes." So the way I read that is that instead of synergies, in some cases, there will be dis-synergies, additional costs to be borne by the town to install sewers where cable conduits are being installed. Is this something that DPW has focused on? Do you have any sense of what the magnitude is of these additional expenses, how this might affect the CWMP budget? And the last question, I think I know the answer to it, but has Avangrid agreed to reimburse the town for these extra expenses?
I can't speak to your last question by any means, because I'm not involved in those conversations by any means.
Right.
Nor do I think there are actually those conversations happening right now.
Right.
There are additional costs associated with installing the sewers adjacent to the duct bank, really because there's additional considerations we have to have in the design. They have to be a little bit deeper. So there are some additional costs associated with the implementation. They may be overcome, frankly, by the fact that we don't have to pave the road. As far as quantifying what those additional costs are, without a design, it's difficult to do so, and we don't have a design for the Commonwealth route.
Okay.
We're not actively working on that route. It's actually large portions of it are shown in phase 2 right now.
Right.
So I think what that comment's getting at, more so than the sewers, frankly, is the other utilities. And, for instance, with the Strawberry Hill Road project and likely with the Park City Wind project, all the water infrastructure has to be relocated because there's not enough physical space to install the duct bank with where the existing water system is. So that's not actually a municipal asset out there. It's COMM,
Right.
as it will be with Park City Wind. But with Vineyard Wind, large portions of the COMM water main were replaced at Avangrid's expense, as was some of the drainage system that was in conflict with some of the work. So I don't know what will happen with Commonwealth Wind if that does proceed, as there's not a host agreement. So this isn't memorialized, but my expectation would be if that project was to proceed, there would be have to be discussions about how those additional costs would be dealt with.
Okay. I have another additional cost question. So I understand and have heard it said by people in the town and Avangrid in their various open houses that they have extensive contact, including weekly meetings or phone calls with DPW regarding planning and execution of the installation of duct banks and substations and the sewers. Are you able to estimate, first of all, is that true? Are there constant meetings or phone calls with Avangrid?
Depends
And
upon what
members of-
project you're talking about.
Well,
During Vineyard Wind,
when Vineyard Wind was ongoing,
yeah,
there
we
was
had
probably a lot of dialogue, right?
absolutely. There were weekly, sometimes twice a week, sometimes more than that. But there were regular weekly meetings at a minimum during construction with Vineyard Wind and their contractors. With Park City Wind right now, I meet with them on a bi-weekly basis, just really to discuss progress. And in fact, our consultants are the same for the design. So they're really talking about the details of the technical nature internally. They're designing both projects and in coordination, such that we don't really need to work through a lot of the technical details with Avangrid. The designer does that. And with Commonwealth Wind, we don't actively have meetings with them right now. We have met with them in the past, but not regular meetings. We've had some initial discussions.
So I guess where I'm headed with the comment is there's a lot of person hours, man hours, woman hours devoted to interfacing with Avangrid on certainly on the first project. The second one, the Craigville project, is you said bi-weekly. So there's time is money. So has DPW quantified the amount of time of your salary and others on your team that is spent talking to Avangrid about various matters?
We have not to date.
But you would agree that that's an additional cost.
Yep. Yes, I would. Yep.
Okay. And I know that Avangrid, I've read both of the existing host agreements, and there's no commitment by Avangrid to reimburse the town for this cost. I have a sort of a related question about the synergies and cost savings that Avangrid talks about. They've said that they're saving the town money by overlapping the sewer installation with the conduit installation by Avangrid. But it's my understanding that there are no, the roads need to be reopened multiple times. It's not like there's one big trench dug and you put in the sewers and then put in the cable conduits and then close everything up. The roads need to be opened multiple times. So there are no cost savings involved in opening the roads. The only cost saving that I can think of is the curb to curb repaving at the end of the project. Is that a correct understanding?
That the largest cost saving is definitely in the paving of the roads. All the trenching is done in separate trenches. There are multiple diggings. There's actually multiple contracts with Vineyard Wind. So, there's not really savings in the excavation portion of the project. There are probably some minor savings on the design side, because we don't have to survey the area, which actually is a pretty significant expense. We've leveraged the wind project surveys for Vineyard Wind, as well as we are currently for Park City Wind, which is some savings up front. Not huge numbers, but some savings up front. But yeah, the biggest saving would be the paving of the roads.
Right. And in the past, I believe in a public meeting, you estimated those savings at about $1 million a mile.
That's about right.
Yeah. That's
Lily and
cost.
Hector, can I jump in here? I just want to make a comment that I think we're straying off the topic of what was on the agenda this evening. And I would suggest that if we want to have a more in-depth conversation about Avangrid's projects, that we put that on an agenda item for a future meeting, and maybe send Griffin the questions in advance so he can prepare for the meeting.
Right.
But I don't want to stray too far off of what was on the agenda this evening. That's all.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, Mark. I just do have one more question. And I would argue this is, it gets to the heart of the discussion about update on the CWMP system. I guess my last question is, Griffin, that Avangrid has repeatedly said publicly that their cable installations are helping the town by accelerating the sewer installation. And it's kind of a zero-sum game. If you put in a sewer, you know, in a place where you hadn't planned on putting it because there's going to be a conduit there, then you have to redirect resources from another part of the CWMP. So do you agree that Avangrid is helping the town accelerate our sewer installation overall?
I would think that's a nuanced question, frankly.
Mhm.
It's accelerate. In theory, it would be requiring us to accelerate sewer expansion in a portion of the project that is currently identified in phase 2.
Right.
Right. But to your point, there's only so much bandwidth and things that we can accomplish at one time. That's why it's a 30-year plan. We can't do
Right.
everything. So that
Right.
will come at the expense of another location. Where that
Mhm.
location is, I don't know at this.
Mhm.
But yes, portions of the route. I think the intent of the statement they've made is that portions of the route are identified in phase 2 and would be moved up into phase 1 and be done sooner than they were previously identified. That's accurate, because we would need to, because there's going to be technical, logistical challenges associated with putting in a sewer after the duct bank's in the ground. Not to mention, we don't get the benefit of the paving, and there would be multiple excavations along the roadway over the course of a number of years, rather than coordinating that in a couple year time frame. So I guess that's the best I can do with answering that question.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm going to jump in here and thank you very much, Griffin, for giving us the broad overview of the project updates, as well as the capital plan. And we're looking forward to having Kelly next time. And if anybody has any specific questions, the way Hector did, if you could send them to Griffin, and we can, as Mark has suggested, we can have him come back and address the more detailed questions that you have. Before we let you go, though, I'm going to ask the other members if they have any comments or questions. Chris? You're muted.
Nope, I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for coming on, Griffin.
Absolutely, anytime.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. Chuck?
Nope, terrific presentation. Thank you.
Yep. Neil?
I'll second Chuck's comment. Fantastic presentation, very much appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
it really
you.
was marvelous. Jackie? You're muted. Wendy?
You know, Griffin answered my questions completely. I would have a few further questions, but I think he did a great job.
Yeah, Wendy, feel free to reach out anytime, and if you want to come in and have a more detailed conversations about your concern, I'm certainly happy to do so.
Yeah,
That's
but I
great.
think you did a great job. So
Yes,
Thank you.
we appreciate it. And Betty, I know that you're here. Do you have any comment?
Yeah, I did have one question, if you guys don't mind. I'm intrigued by the what you're doing to make the effluent have less nitrogen in it. And I think there was a question asked, said at the time, maybe we do less sewering in Hyannis, but we've submitted the plan as it stands for the compliance with DEP. So are you talking about maybe future changes to the plan, or the plan as submitted? Would you take some homes out of Hyannis, Griffin? Is that what you meant by that?
No, and I apologized earlier for not being clear on that, Counselor. What I meant by that is, if we do not reduce, our plan actually accounts for us to reduce some nitrogen from the plant to 3 milligrams per liter. So that's how we've built our plan. So if we don't do that, we would actually have to add additional sewers in the Lewis Bay watershed. Which would be more expensive than the wastewater treatment plant upgrade.
So that part of the plan that was submitted was this upgrade.
Yes, this is part of the plan.
And then just one more follow on to that, because it's always a moving target. With these apartments coming online on Main Street alone, we have what, 210. How do those figure into the plan? Because it is a moving target.
Yeah, absolutely. Something I actually was talking about with staff as recently as today, as we were talking about capital projects for next year. We are keeping a close eye on the growth in specifically in the Hyannis area, and in some other areas in town. It is planned for in the plan. There is a build out projection within the plan, which allocates flow to the plant, and that is planned for. And we will continue to monitor if our projections were accurate or if they need to be built upon further. From an infrastructure perspective, as far as the sewers that are in the ground that are going to handle that growth, we've done some studying on those, and right now they're fine. They can handle everything that's being proposed. We do expect that we're going to take another step back and do another study on the capacity of the existing sewers. But from the CWMP perspective and the treatment plant perspective, we have planned for growth. So it is part of our planning when we're designing any upgrades to the plant, which ultimately is where the concerns in our permit are, as far as how much flow we can handle in the system.
Okay, that's it. Thank you so much.
Of course, thank you.
Griffin, again, thank you very much for bringing us up to date on this. And it gives us, because we do the money stuff, it gives us a better perspective. And as you can tell from our questions, we're really keen on this project.
Absolutely, you should be.
Yes, we are.
And I would just
Thank
like
you, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
And I would like to echo what everyone said. Excellent presentation, Griffin. And given that you have a very, very busy day, we appreciate you coming out at night and talking to us. So thanks again.
Of course. Thank you, Hector. And thank you, everybody. I look forward to.
I have a question. I'm sorry, I was on mute. My question is, since it concerns Cape Cod, could there be a collaborative movement for the towns of Cape Cod to come together and eliminate, especially in a timely manner, some of the effects of the nitrogen that's already in the system, instead of just allowing it to just be shouldered by the town of Barnstable?
So I'm not sure I have a good answer for you on that, unfortunately. Really, by regulations, it's the town's responsibility to remediate their waterways under the Federal Clean Water Act. A lot of our impaired estuaries are a result of our town, right? It's not other communities impairing our water bodies. It's our community doing it, right? It really is the town's responsibility to address this issue. As far as if the federal dollars or dollars from outside sources could come, that would be fantastic to help fund that. But I don't foresee a Cape-wide collaborative really making the difference, at least for our community. Some of the other communities have studied intermunicipal options. There was a lot of discussion about the DHY, the Dennis Harwich Yarmouth solution a couple years ago. What they were principally looking at was building a wastewater treatment plant together, right? And using the economy of scale to make it more cost effective. We already have a wastewater treatment plant, so it's one of the assets that really benefits us in this program. We have had conversations with other communities about intermunicipal partnerships, and they haven't to date made a lot of sense. So right now, that's probably where we stand on that matter.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Thank you so much, Griffin.
Of course. Thank you all. If I don't come back to see you all sooner, I look forward to seeing you all in CIP season. So
yes, you're welcome to be a member of our committee anytime.
Okay. Look forward to it. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
That was just an excellent presentation. We're going to move on now to the health insurance benefit that was discussed by the town council in August. Mark?
Lillian, before we go on, I
Sure.
am not able to stay. I did send you an email. I'm not able to stay on the call any longer.
Oh, I see. Well, I think you will be able, I think that Mark has provided us his entire presentation so that you have it in your documents
Yeah.
that he sent to us.
Okay.
So you will be able to review that. And if you have any questions, you can ask him the next time.
Okay,
Thank you so much for coming.
thank you too.
Okie doke, Mark.
Okay, can everybody see this?
Yep.
All right, it's the wrong
Yep.
presentation. Let's see. Make sure I get the right one here. All right, this was the presentation given to the town council back at their August 17th meeting. I won't go through all of these slides. It was a presentation made by multiple people, including the town manager Els, town attorney Nober, Human Resources Director Bill Cole, and myself. Essentially, let me hit this share. Hold on here. I'm just going to advance the slides in the pre mode here. You know, town manager Al started off the presentation by just talking about, you know, we're a provider of services, and in order to provide those services, we have a lot of employees, and a lot has changed recently in the employment market, as you know. It's getting really challenging out there to retain and attract employees as a result of rising salaries and benefits, and other reasons as well. So we were asked during the budget cycle by the town council to look at the process that we're using and come back with more information regarding our employee ways we can perhaps improve our employee vacancy rates, and so that we can continue to provide, you know, good services to the community by filling some of these vacancies that we have. I think we have over 100 vacancies currently throughout our workforce. So, and then town attorney Nober just talked about some of the conflict of interests matters that we have to take into consideration when we're talking specifically about health insurance, because that was the topic of conversation that they really wanted us to come back with and cover with them is what is our current health insurance cost, and how do we share that with employees, and what changes to that shared contribution rate would look like financially. And in order to do so, we have to recognize the conflict of interest laws in regards to this matter, because you know, several of our town councilors take health insurance with the town. Several of our employees who are involved in union negotiations take health insurance for the town and receive a health insurance benefit. So we have to be cognizant of the conflict of interest laws and how we go about navigating those to make sure that we you know, provide appropriate disclosures to the State Ethics Commission, to your supervisor, and so forth, to the town council, about who are those employees who may benefit from such a change in employee health insurance. So she covered the steps and procedures that we had to go through in order to make sure that we comply with the conflict of interest laws. And so how do we get it? How do we establish right now our current contribution rate is 50%. We provide 50% of the health insurance costs for employees. The employee pays the other 50%. And that was established through Mass General Law, Chapter 32, Section 7. That law states that all municipalities in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts have to provide at least 50% of the cost of the health insurance benefit, no less. That's the floor. In order to move away from that, the town would have to adopt what's known as Section 7B, which just allows a community to come off the health insurance, a 50% health insurance split. And so that's what the town council did at that meeting. That doesn't mean we're going to change, but it does say that, okay, the town manager else can now sit down with the unions and negotiate any possible change in the health insurance contribution rate. And if there were any change negotiated, of course, the people sitting at the collective bargaining table could benefit from that, as well as several of our town councilors, hence the need to file appropriate disclosures with the State Ethics Commission. So all of that was taken care of. And then we moved into a conversation about employment and recruitment, and Director Cole of our Human Resources Department covered some information regarding that. And it's been difficult for us. We've had, over the past 12 months, a couple dozen candidates in upper to mid to the upper level positions decline jobs with DPW, citing mainly the health insurance contribution as being a factor in that decision. It's not the only factor for some potential candidates. For us, housing, of course, is another key issue for every community down here in Cape Cod. But certainly a 50% health insurance rate contribution puts us at a disadvantage when somebody's looking for a job in a neighboring community versus the town of Barnstable. We've had, several 13 teaching candidates at BHS, high school or intermediate school, and BUES declined positions as a result and went to work for other school districts as well. So again, that makes it very difficult. That 50% health insurance contribution does make it more difficult for us to attract and retain employees. We've had people leave as well, getting a better offer elsewhere. Somebody pays, 75 to 80% of their health insurance. And so regionally, this is what the health insurance contributions look like for other entities, government entities on Cape Cod. You can see many of them, all of them pay more than 50%, with the exception of Yarmouth in some cases. But we're dealing with anywhere from 65, 70, 75, 80% in some cases, like the town of Plymouth just across the bridge, which is a competitor for us. So as you can see, we're at the floor. Really, nobody else is at the floor. So hence the reason why this topic of discussion has been approached, and we've been approached to talk about it. Again, our current health insurance contribution is 50-50. We do have some current agreements within our collective bargaining arrangements or agreements that provide what we call premium holidays for employees, whereby we basically shut off the deduction for health insurance for some of the pay periods. We have 6 weekly premium holidays for non-school collective bargaining agreements, and 4 bi-weekly pay periods whereby all school employees receive premium holidays. And so that effective contribution rate results in about a 56 to 44% for non-school employees and about a 58 to 42% for school employees. So we're actually a little bit better than 50-50 when you take into account the premium holidays that have been negotiated in the collective bargaining agreements. And that was the only way we could adjust the split per se, because we couldn't move off of 50-50 because of the state law that we had not accepted to this point. And our retiree group does not receive any premium holidays, so they still pay 50-50. So our current participation rate is about 56% of our workforce. So we have right now, well, this is a snapshot in time. This changes on a daily basis as people come and go. But at this point in time, we had 1,345 employees that were eligible for health insurance based on the number of hours that they work per week. And we had 750 employees taking health insurance with the town of Barnstable. So that was about a 56% participation rate. And the average cost to the town as a result was about $11,224 per participant. So our current cost for those 750 employees at 50/50 is about $8,417,000. If we were to change that split to 60/40 and drop the premium holidays, the cost increase over our current health insurance cost would be about $358,000 for those 750 employees. If we went to 70/30, it jumps to about 1.8 million. And if we were to go to 80/20, our health insurance cost would jump to by about 3.3 million. Again, all those scenarios eliminate those premium holidays and replaces it with a higher contribution rate. And it only accounts for the 750 current participating employees. We have 117 vacant positions at that point in time when we did this presentation. Again, that changes every day. So how many more of those 117 vacancies, when they do ultimately get filled, would participate? We don't really know, but we could assume maybe another 56% of those based on our current participation rate. But the other factor we don't know is if we increase the contribution rate to something other than 50/50, say 70/30, 80/20, we're probably going to get a higher participation rate than 56%, because employees who currently receive their health insurance from a spouse, let's say, it may be a financial advantage to them to now join the town's health insurance plan as a result of the increased contribution rate. So, but we don't have any metrics to measure that. We can send a survey out to every non-participating employee asking them, hey, would you join a health insurance plan if it matched this contribution rate? And we're not going to get the responses back that give us really any good information. The only way we're going to find out is if we actually, when and if we actually did it, what happens. And I think the town of Dennis went to, I believe, 70% a couple of years ago, and they said they have about 80% of their workforce participating in the health insurance plan. So those are some of the other cost considerations we have to think about. But some other ones are, the change in the contribution rate, have more employees jump on board, but future premium rate increases as we come out of this, as we are now out of this pandemic that we've gone through. We're starting to see, health insurance costs tick up in the terms of elective surgeries, which had been postponed for a couple of years through the whole pandemic and things like that. And I would expect to see health insurance costs start to grow again. It's typically increases at a rate higher than inflation. We've all experienced rising costs and services in this area, and that translates to more costs for the health group that we belong to, and ultimately translates into higher premium rates. So the other thing that's not factored into this impact is what are our future premium rate increases expected to be. Historically, they've been 5 to 8% on average. The past 2 years, we've only seen a 3% increase. We had 2 years in a row where we had 0% increases. That was during COVID. Again, there wasn't a lot happening from a surgery standpoint during that period of time. And so we saw no premium increases for 2 years in a row, and then 3% for the past couple of years. But again, historically, they've been closer to 5 to 8%. And then we also have this other post-employment benefit liability consideration. This is just a paper liability. It's not anything we need to finance currently. It's just one of those paper liabilities like pensions were years ago, which we are now forced to make contributions towards, and fund that unfunded liability. Health insurance hasn't had that mandatory funding law passed yet, but our current liability is about 130 million. If we were to increase the health insurance benefit for our workforce, of course, it's going to translate into, a pretty sizable increase in our liability for other post-employment benefits, because that's a benefit we're promising our employees into their retirement, while they're currently actively working for us, and then into their retirement. And all these accounting pronouncements now require us to recognize that cost on our financial statements. Again, paper only, it's on our financial statements, but we're not being mandated to create a funding schedule to pay off that unfunded liability yet. The day will come sometime in the future, probably when the pension systems are fully funded. They'll turn to this liability and mandate communities to start funding that liability as well. And then the last thing we need to consider is what do we do about our retiree and surviving spouse group? That's another section of the law that would have to be adopted if we were to extend any change in health insurance contribution rate to our retiree group, because again, they're 50-50 as well, and that would take another action, a legislative action, in order to change that. So we presented this to the council at the last meeting. We're now, we're actively negotiating with all of our collective bargaining units outside of the school department. School departments all signed up. They have a 3-year agreement that expires in June of 2024, but all of our other unions are working out of contract. Their agreements expired June 30th, 2023. Any change to health insurance, because it affects everyone, we have to go through a process of what's called coalition bargaining, which means you negotiate with every single union simultaneously. You're not doing it one group at a time, because it's a benefit that would that impacts all. So a little different process. Director of Human Resources leads that process with all of our collective bargaining units. And that's where we are right now. We're in the middle of analyzing and meeting with those unions, and eventually we'll decisions will need to be made. If we were to change anything, what if this were a priority, of course, naturally we'd have to redirect resources to this initiative, and so it's not an inexpensive proposition, but it certainly would make us more competitive from a recruiting standpoint, as well as allow us to retain good employees like town engineer Griffin Bodine that you just heard from tonight. I mean, he's a fantastic asset for us that could easily be stolen, by another community down here that wants to implement the CWMP. Because when they see what he's done with our CWMP, they may make him a pretty nice offer to come do the same thing for them. So, we gotta find tools to allow us to keep a good employees and attract good employees, because we want to provide the best services we can for our community, and it takes talent. You have to have talented people in order to provide those good services to the community. So
Mark, Mike, I 100% agree with your assessment on this. I think that the talented should get rewarded, and the town shouldn't procrastinate with getting the benefits to those people, because I know many town employees, and this is a bone of contention with regard to benefits. So I completely understand what you're saying, and I think it's a thing that we should consider. Even though it's financially expensive, it is what we need to do for the town.
Yeah, I would say to scrimp on this would be penny wise, pound foolish.
Yeah. The question I have is, would any changes have to be, when we change the ratio, does the town council have to initiate and pass that?
No, they gave the authority to the town manager to do so. The town
Ah.
manager under our charter has the responsibility for conducting all collective bargaining negotiations. And so he has that responsibility, but ultimately the town council approves it by approving a budget that is brought forward by the town manager. So if the town manager were to bring forward a budget that included an increased cost share for health insurance, it would include, what that is in the budget, and they could vote that budget up or down because, it's subject to appropriation.
Right.
But they don't approve the rate. They don't say, okay, we're going to make it 70-30, 80-20, 75-25. No, they don't do that. They leave that responsibility. They've delegated that responsibility to the town manager. It's delegated to the charter that he has that responsibility.
And this change and the increased costs, if the funding proportion by the town goes up, could happen in the current fiscal year, could it not? If the contracts, you say all the unions except the schools are working without a contract, so in theory, it could be a end of the year event, midway through the fiscal year.
In theory, but most likely, if we were to make a change, it would be brought forward with the FY25 budget proposal, because we're gonna be halfway through this. We're already almost one quarter into the new fiscal year already.
Mark, how does, clearly from the data you presented, Barnstable is out of whack compared to all of the local competition in terms of the percentage. But how do wages, salaries compare to the other towns?
Yeah, I think we're competitive with other towns. It's one of the things that are looked at when the contracts are negotiated. What are other towns paying? What are their cost of living allowances being negotiated at? And I think when we look at teacher salaries or police officer salaries and comparing with other communities around us, I think we're pretty competitive. I mean, we're not at the top, we're not at the bottom, we're probably upper middle.
Yeah, because I was just doing a back of the envelope, and so if the increase in benefits would translate to about a $2,000 a year increase across the board in salaries. I'm just, it's a trade-off. I mean,
right.
I think looking at only the healthcare benefits, which are clearly out of whack comparatively, may not provide the best basis on which to evaluate.
It's a great point, Neil, and we've discussed this amongst with our collective bargaining groups and our workforce, because when you talk about it, when you currently have a 56% participation rate, and you're talking about changing a benefit that only benefits 56% of our workforce, right? And the other 44% that don't participate say, well, what's in it for me?
Yeah.
You're right. I mean, maybe the salary is, but if you look at salaries and pay everybody more, then you keep the health insurance split at 50-50. It's a balancing decision. You have to figure out where's that point where you can maybe make adjustments to salaries and keep it at 50-50, but then it's all, it really depends on whether the employee is on an individual plan or a family plan, because when you get into a family plan, it gets very expensive.
Yes.
And a change from 50 to say 75% becomes significant money.
And that's pre-tax money too.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
What about, you mentioned unions, is every town, I'm pretty sure not every town employee is a member of a union. So for example, Griffin, would he be a union member?
Yes, he is.
Oh, yes. Are you a union member?
No, I am not.
So how many town employees are not union members?
I think we have about 50 or 50 to 60
Yeah,
unaffiliated employees.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's mostly, department head level.
right, okay.
Some.
And what about pensions? Are pensions, they're set by the state, so the
Yeah.
pension contributions are equal across the various towns on the Cape, depending on your seniority and your salary grade, right?
Yeah, it depends on well, first of all, you have to work at least 25 hours a week to be eligible to participate in the Barnstable County retirement system or the state
Okay.
pension. And then, depending upon when you were hired, determines what your contribution rate is. So,
Uh-huh.
if you were hired before, I think 1984, you only contributed 5% of your salary. There's not many, if any, of those employees around anymore. They're all
Right.
retired now. But most of our employees today contribute, I believe it's 10% of their salary, and then anything over $30,000, it's an additional 2%.
Uh-huh. And would that be the same as an employee in Falmouth or
Same, yes,
Ashby?
across the state, all communities, yes,
It's a state system,
yes.
not a county system.
Well, no, Barnstable County is a separate system from the state's pension system, but they all operate the same as far as the contribution rates go.
Okay, okay.
This is really interesting. If we go up to 75% or 70%, the participation rate might go up as well.
Yes,
Yeah,
you're guaranteed.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So then the impact on the total budget will be
The cost increase,
yeah,
it's gonna
it will
be, it's
increased
gonna
by
be
a great-
well over $1.8 million.
Oh, yeah,
It's going to exceed 3 million most likely if we get
Yeah.
but we'd have to wait till open enrollment, which open enrollment occurs usually in the month of, we do it from like mid-April to mid-May is usually the open enrollment period. So we wouldn't know until mid-May, which is, the time where we are we're bringing forward the proposed budget to the
Right.
town council. So we
Right.
would have to estimate, what any increase in participation rate might look like if we were to move off of 50/50 and then include that in the budget proposal that goes before the town council. And we wouldn't know the real number until that open enrollment period is over.
Wow.
So is there any thinking about what cost trade-off or what cost would go down to cover the increase in employee cost?
Well, you mean like reduce salaries and as
No.
opposed?
I mean, let's say that the total
Where,
cost goes up by a combination of things, both union negotiation as well as in addition to what is ever negotiated on the health benefits. So the savings you showed us in the fiscal year 23, which were primarily not people in the that had been expected to be hired who weren't hired,
Right.
saved like $2 million last year that way.
Yeah, the vacancy savings, from open positions, right?
Right. So
Yeah.
this would, the 3 to 4, especially if the participation rate went up, and you went to say a 75%, which seems to be the most common level to be competitive. You have a $2 million excess. That's got to come out of something, including the Proposition 2.5 increase, as well as debts going up.
Yeah, it
So,
would certainly mean, if this were a priority, if this is, something
Right.
that we needed to do, it's going to become a fixed cost. That's
Right.
of a
Yeah,
highest priority. We would
absolutely.
have to fund before we make any decisions regarding any remaining
Yep.
resources that may be left over and what we could do. So we would have to take this right off the top of the bat, like we do currently with employee benefits, is make sure we put enough money aside every year to cover the increased cost of benefits before we figure out what's remaining for the operating budgets for each department.
Right.
right, okay.
But again, even if we were to go to 75-25, housing is such an issue right now. I think it's still going to take time to fill the vacant positions, even with the higher contribution rate, unless we start stealing from our fellow communities. That's the only way I can see it happening, is that you get people who currently live on the Cape who wouldn't have to, relocate. And where's that pool of people? Where does that pool of people exist? Other communities.
Yeah, I agree with you. The housing thing, just down the street, a guy who bought his house for less than 500, just put it on the market for $1 million yesterday. And he'll probably get it. The housing's out of control.
And police officers and firefighters and school teachers can't afford $1 million home.
Yeah.
Salary.
No, but I think the benefits package is it's a huge issue, Mark. And I think to tackle that, regardless of home ownership, is a huge thing.
Yeah.
Because you will get employees because they want to get benefits. If you don't have that, they won't come. So, the housing issue is a whole different thing, as we know.
I would agree with you, Wendy, except that when you calculate the cost, you take the $3 to $4 million, and as Mark says, you're not going to fill all the jobs. You're paying something on the order of $50,000 to $75,000 per additional employee. When you allocate that over the number of employees you're going to actually add, it's a huge cost.
Well, I think you need to consider the benefits package, because you won't get employees without the benefits package. So, that's just my assessment on it. You're not going to get the people that you want if they don't have benefits. I know many people in the town, and they have left without benefits package because they have to go elsewhere. So we have to be cognizant of that.
Yeah, it certainly puts us at a disadvantage. Absolutely. There's no doubt about that. And I think changing the benefit package will bear some fruit, so to speak, in that I think we'll have more success in filling positions, but it's not the only thing that affects our ability to recruit. But it certainly is a major component of it.
Well, we have faith in the town manager. We know that he'll be a good negotiator. And we'll find out in April, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. That's a tough one.
Actually, to the degree, is it possible to do anything for town employee housing?
Well, what corporations do when they relocate or hire a new employee, they will give you moving expenses, and the bigger corporations will provide the down payment for your house. I'm not sure that the town can afford that, but that's what the Fortune 500 corporations do.
Yeah, I've seen, recruiting strategies change in the world of municipal government, whereby they are offering exactly that type of assistance, and moving assistance.
That would be helpful. Yeah.
Mainly, but I haven't seen it gone as far as down payments on homes or transitional housing, so something like that. I think Nantucket had a program. They might still have a program where they actually own a house, whereby if you go to work for them, I think you can live there for like 6 months until you find a place or something like that. But I don't know if they're still running that program. But yeah, we don't have any kind of housing for our workforce that would cost money to build something like that, and then it would have to be transitional in nature. We'd have to, only allow them to stay there until they can find a permanent home. I don't think we can provide them a permanent residency anywhere.
Right.
I think the idea of looking at things that are transitional kind of addresses the issue you were talking about, Mark, which is once you bake in higher benefits costs, those just go up every year.
Hmm.
So, I mean, if people believe that the hiring problem is going to continue for the next decade or two, then that's one situation. If that's not what people think, then I think committing to that long-term expense, and I'm not against it. Clearly, it's not competitive today, but I just think there might be alternatives too.
Well, there's no doubt that our fixed costs are going to go up.
Yeah, I think we need to consider being competitive. Like, honestly, we need to understand that the people that we want to attract are considering all these other options. So we need to consider that.
And I agree with you. Wendy. I think everybody else agrees with you that the health insurance contribution is out of whack. But the housing issue, the supply of available housing, it's not just purchasing housing, rental housing for moderate income workers. It's just very hard to find on the Cape.
Yes,
And
because we have Airbnb purchasing every,
well,
I have a couple of houses that I rent to really the people that work here for very, very low rent, but it's not a normal thing to do.
right.
So yes, I understand, but on the other hand, we need to figure out a way to make those things happen. We need to either they have lower rent or they have, the town needs to support a project to provide, lower rent housing to these people. I mean, I can only do it for a couple of people. I can't do it for the town.
Well, thanks, Mark. This was very interesting.
Yeah.
We'll be
Right, well-
interested to,
We're
We'll
very
be-
interested to see what's going to happen.
yeah. So when will the results of those labor negotiations become known? Coming months?
Coming months, yeah. I would, yeah. Definitely before the end of this fiscal year, though, we should be completed.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it'd be helpful once those results are known, it'd be helpful to talk about this topic again and see where we came out.
Sure. Absolutely.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay.
It's certainly something to think about. It's actually huge.
Yep.
Does any member have anything that you want to bring up, Neil?
Well, for the next meeting, we should plan to talk about. Okay, go ahead.
Neil had something about the computer capacities of the members. Do you want to address that? I don't know where he is. Is he gone?
No,
Neil's here.
He's
I'm
here.
here. I think I'm here.
You're there.
You had talked about the
Yeah, I did.
our respective capacities,
Yeah,
and
I sent that out, the data that I had, I sent out to everybody earlier today. And it seems that almost everyone is using some version of Microsoft Word of the people who responded, except for Chris, who was using Google Docs, but he said he'd be willing to, you could speak for yourself, Chris,
I'll certainly work with whatever anyone else wants to do. I'm easy that way.
You know what? I don't have anything but Google Docs, but Microsoft Word, I think, is what's compatible to Mark's system. So I think we need to understand that if we're going to do documents, we need to be compatible with Mark.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Well, it makes it easier for us to edit.
I mean, I'm not too excited about buying the prescription, the subscription, but hey, whatever,
The good news is you don't have to buy it. You can get it for free.
Well, where, Neil? Because everything I've found is I have to buy it. So
What do we need to get, Neil?
I will send out a link.
perfect.
Microsoft supplies a free version of Word online. It actually works differently, but it's the same as Google Docs. It's all online, so you don't even need a computer, just a browser basically. And they're all basically compatible. It doesn't have quite as many features, but it will do everything that we need, I think.
Perfect.
So I will send that out as a follow-up, and people can you can take a look at it. Chris can take a look at it. There is a learning curve. Obviously, it works different than Google Docs, not that much. But I think the other advantage is when we have drafts that are integrated, when they're sent out, they will show as they actually were meant to be shown, which Google Docs doesn't always get quite right. And so that may be a big help.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, Mark, what is the status of our overview report?
We should, it'll be ready from the printers by the end of this week. I should have them Thursday or Friday. I'll email you all when they're back from the printers. I've got 50 copies for each of you. And I did ask our webmaster to post this year's report onto the website under CFAC. I did just checked it before this meeting. It's not up there yet, but it should be this week. And they will start, I think they're going to experiment with using Google Analytics to start tracking the downloads or the hits that it receives. So that was a suggestion that came from Neil. If we could do that.
I'm wondering, Mark, whether there's a way to solicit those hits.
No.
Yeah, I don't know either, but
what do you mean? What form of solicitation are you?
Well, I'm just saying that if it's just on the website, for example, like in my opinion, no one's going to look at it. I have to say, nobody's going to look at it. But if there's a way to reach out to people, if there's a way to like hook them into possibly looking at it, maybe that's a way to have them look at that document, because it's a great document. It's fabulous. But, if we just post it on the website, is that a realistic way to get people to look at it? Or is there a way to get people to, think about it other than just Googling the website?
Could we put it on the home page of barnstable.mass.us, Mark? Along the left side, we have water resources, comprehensive plan. Could we get some of that space for a period of a few weeks?
I can ask if we can put it on the home page. I'll check with the communications director and ask them.
Okay,
put it up there for the first, say, 30 days before they move it to CFAC.
Yeah,
okay.
That would be an idea. And then Neil had some ideas, which we'll talk about next meeting about other. Okay.
Yes.
And what else should we do, Lillian, at the next meeting?
We are going to have Kelly Colopy from DPW talk about her PR.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about Neil's suggestions about PR. Is there anything else you think we need to talk about, Mark?
Not at this point, but if something
Okay.
comes up, I will contact you and see if you want to
Okay.
add it to the agenda.
All right.
If anybody feels like they have anything they want to add to the agenda, please just reach out to Lily and myself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I would just, further to our conversation tonight, we should figure out, we should put housing on our agenda for, a future meeting.
Make a note. Well, we'll need to refine what exactly
yeah.
around there we want to talk about and who we should invite in.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd like to give that some thought, but I think it's, as we've all been saying, it's a major issue facing the town. It gets brought up at every town council meeting. So maybe we should put our thinking caps on about, any ways that, we as a committee could propose some ideas for the town council to consider.
Well, isn't there actually a whole group that does focus on house planning, and they've written a report which is several years old now, from last I could find.
Yeah, we have a housing committee, of
Oh.
course, that the planning and development department leads this effort, works with a lot of different groups. Yep. And so, I'm thinking that perhaps we can have Director Jenkins come in and just provide this group an update as to, where our housing production plan and other efforts that are being undertaken, maybe talk about some of the expected permits to be pulled for housing. You heard somebody mention tonight that, there's a couple of hundred units of new rental housing being proposed in the downtown Hyannis area, the former TD Bank building and a couple of other buildings down there. So, we want an update on that. We could bring Director Jenkins in.
Yeah, I think that would be a
great.
good way to
Yeah.
start.
While she's doing that for economic development, I wonder if she could also talk to us about the local comprehensive plan. That committee has been very, very active over the last couple of years, and they're really looking at how to develop the downtown. So I think it would behoove us to get some more information, because I frankly don't know much about what's happening.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I think housing is one topic. I think local comprehensive planning would be a separate meeting topic. Both of them, I think, Mark, could be presented by Jenkins or one of her people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think especially the housing issue in terms of how it interacts with property taxes is a major.
No, I think it's the supply of housing.
Well, there is
that-
none.
Well, that's the topic. It's not
Yeah. there
property
is none.
taxes. It's the supply of housing and how that impacts, people willing to move to the Cape or not even being able to move to the Cape. And it's not owned housing. It's really rental housing for workers that is really in very, very short supply. That's the topic that I would think I'd like to hear Jenkins talk about.
Okay, does anybody have any other issues that you'd like to bring up? Okay, that being the case, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move.
Second,
I second.
Chuck, it's been moved and seconded.
Ready? Lillian,
Yes.
Hector,
Yes.
Neil,
Yes.
Wendy,
Yes.
Chris.
Yes.
Thank you,
And Chuck is
everybody.
yes.
This was